octopus, a nice octopus. So let's do some intro. So for the video, we're discussing Argo CD up and running. It's a new book that came out. It has everything that you need for getting Argo CD up and running. I think it's in production. It is in production, and the book authors are Andrew Block and Christian Hernandez, and they're here with us. So I want to do some intros, Christian, and then Andrew. Like Christian, can you tell us who you are, a little bit about the book history, and then Andrew will do the same.
Yeah, no, thank you. So I'm Christian Hernandez, as you can probably see here. Based out of LA, so you can probably see the sun shining here. And been working on Argo for a long time, right? So when I was at Red Hat, one of my boss at the time said, "Hey, we're going into the GitOps world, and we're going to join this project, little known project called the Argo project," right? And so it's been that long since I've been part of the ecosystem, and really and we're going to go over it in the next I guess a little later on, but one thing about Argo CD is that it's very unopinionated. Right, it's kind of like a generic DevOps tool on Kubernetes, right, with a GitOps the ability to do GitOps with it, right? And so the goal in the book is like, okay, like one of the things is like you can do anything with it. It's like, well, like how do I get up and running, right? Like I actually need a clear guide, right? Like what are like kind of like the best practices and kind of just like a clear start line for me and a clear path to be able to implement this in production, right? Like what are the things that people care about, right? And not to steal any of Andrew's thunder, but kind of like the things that we've been working on with both Andy and I, with our respective customers. Like we brought together kind of our respective experiences on like what works best in order just to get started with Argo CD. So I think I don't want to steal any more of Andy's thunder, and I'll let him kind of introduce himself, kind of his thoughts.
You can steal plenty of my thunder. So let me just give a quick introduction to myself. My name's Andy Block. I'm a distinguished architect from Red Hat. I've been working with Christian in the GitOps space for Christian, how long has it been at this point?
Yeah, how long it is? That's how I know you folks, right?
Well, I mean, we've known each other for what, like 10 plus years, right? So probably maybe 5, 6, 7 years in the Argo space together. So.
Yeah, so I wasn't getting into GitOps many years ago before Argo really took off. I wouldn't say I was in the club that really started developing it initially, but I was in the early days of like 1.02, give or take, and I saw an interest, since most of my work is around enterprise Kubernetes with Red Hat's product OpenShift. And I saw a need to use that within our product. I'm working with our customers globally, and they were starting to hear about GitOps, so I was trying to talk to them about it. So my foray into GitOps and OpenShift and Argo was, how do I bring the worlds together? Because OpenShift is a very security-minded platform, or Argo has a couple of security capabilities with DEX, for example, and I wanted to be able to see if I can go ahead and take the authentication world that OpenShift provides and bring it into Argo's world, and ended up doing an upstream contribution to the DEX project that brought in a new connector for OpenShift. So if you're an OpenShift customer and you click that button that says login with OpenShift, that's my little contribution to the Argo and community. So that's how I got started into it, and then started working with Christian a lot, and I mean a lot, over time, and this led to the kind of O'Reilly kind of reaching out to us, because we've done some work with O'Reilly in the past. I know I had, and they kind of came to us and said, "Hey, we have an interest for an Argo book. You guys are both doing a lot in the community. Would you be interested in writing it?" And of course I'm like, "Sure." And I realized that, oh yeah, great, add it to my list of 18,000 other things. So after working a very, very long time with Christian, lots of highs and lows, writing a book is awesome. If you ever have the opportunity, I will always say, please give it a try, because there is no process. There really is no process for writing a book. It is mainly go ahead and take an idea, work with your publisher, and make it actually into something big, because they can help. As long as you have an idea, they have an interest in it, you can work together and come up with a really good story. And that's really what Christian and I were able to do, is we came up with a great story about how we think end users are going to be able to be interested in Argo CD, not only GitOps, but then be able to then implement it in production. This book is built for production.
Yep.
It's going to have a lot of considerations for production. So it's not just a, oh, I'm going to go ahead and spin it up on a kind cluster and that's the end of it. No. This is going to be built and used for enterprise clusters.
Yeah, like I said, like up and running, and if there was more space, right, in the title, usually publishers don't like to put a long title. It's like running in production, right? That was the something that it could be debatable, right? Adding that in there, because this I review I'm on chapter 3, but I review the whole book, and are like this. These are the type of things that I do in a weekly basis, and some of my co-workers are in the book club, and they can also say like these are the type of things that we see people in production when they run Kubernetes, and maybe if we have a lot of hope, maybe we get into Kubernetes, like Kubernetes one with packages included, like it comes with GitOps, or maybe not, but I think it should, some aspect of GitOps should be in Kubernetes to get even greater adoption. But so that's good. So how long it took to write the book? When did you start it? When did you end?
Oof. How long? Well,
Yeah. When
I
did,
mean,
did you start it, like the idea of like
yeah,
starting writing like that layout
I want to say,
to the point
yeah,
that
I want to
now,
say,
right?
yeah, I want to say like 2 years ago, and maybe two and
2 years
a half
ago.
years, about
Oh,
two and a half.
it was
The
more like
idea
three.
came.
It was
Yeah,
3+.
Oh wow.
yeah, that's when the original, I think, idea outline conversation started, around 3 years ago. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
So
and then
that makes
yeah,
a little bit sense of like you've been working on this book the last 3 years, and I can see some of your public talks showing off this book content, right, in them, and
yeah,
also
yeah. Well,
the
it's
talks, right?
yeah, exactly. Well, it was kind of like beta testing, or kind of like, testing kind of like the waters of trying to be like, oh, like is this an interesting topic? And based on that feedback, I would bulk up or maybe trim down a chapter, or anything like that. But yeah, like you've seen a lot. Some of these chapters are related to some of the talks I've done publicly. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I said, no, Luke said writing something that keeps changing and improving. That, so part of the reason I
Yeah.
think Andy could attest to this is like a lot of the reason it took a little while is because we kept going back and updating certain things, like as things went from like alpha to beta, or from beta to production. We would like go back and kind of rewrite it, or kind of retool it. I mean, that's an ever changing thing. Like, you're never going to be done with a book if you do it that way, but we wanted it to be as close. For me, my goal was like everything that's supported in 3.0 should be in the book, right? So that way, whether you're running 2.x or 3.x, it should work, right? So that was like my ultimate goal.
Yeah, and there's some comments here about the feedback from people from the community, like Michael Crenshaw. If you don't know him, he's the lead maintainer of our Argo CD. He says like leading Argo experts is clear and to the point. Somebody else had I kind of like the impression that I think a lot of people are going to have is, I wish I had this book when I first started learning Argo CD. Right, the docs are there for Argo CD, but to run it in production, I think is I would say it's scattered in Slack.
Yeah,
Right. That's I
tribal
do a lot
knowledge,
of
right?
Slack.
It's like
Yeah, tribal
yeah.
knowledge that is I would say small, right? Like small, like maybe 50 people know versus like the thousands. I think we're up to 5,000 people in that Slack, or even more. I need to check in the Slack channel. Go ahead, Andrew.
I want to circle back to the whole I'm gonna write a book and I'm scared to write a book kind of thing. And a lot of it comes down to, you learn a lot. I mean, I learned just by writing the book a lot more about Argo that I didn't know in the past. These are things that honestly Christian had taken the lead on some of the chapters, and just reading through some of the chapters and reviewing the content that he put together, I learned a lot. And even in the chapters that I put together, I learned even more about Argo, because very much like teaching a class, I've taught in university courses before, and you will not, if you have ever taken a course, you do not understand the amount of work that goes into preparing a course. and preparing content. And if you're able to teach it, you then know it. So always, I say use a book as an opportunity to learn a subject, become that subject matter expert, because you get typecasted. I'm not going to lie. I'm typecasted into a couple of different roles. Christian knows that, when people see me within Red Hat, I'm Mr. OpenShift because I sat and did OpenShift for years.
Years.
And same thing with Christian. Christian, he's Mr. Argo. It's just who he is. It's his skill set. Always build a brand from yourself, and it's going to be something from tech that you do on a daily basis, or it could be something like, hey, maybe you go ahead and you start a weekend group that goes ahead and hikes. Sure, great, doesn't matter, doesn't have to be tech. Anything you want.
Yep.
As long as you have fun doing it and others do too, go for it.
Yep. Finding others that align with your vision or ideas, right? And creating kind of like that cohort or group around yourself is better, right? To just do it, the journey going along. Somebody said that we should grab it. Asking, are the Slack archive saves? And actually, this morning I was thinking on, we did that for another channel in Slack. I think it was Knative. We used a tool to dump all these messages from Slack to back it up because it was going away. And I was thinking creating a RAG to create kind of like a chat bot or something that we can just ask that versus us, the maintainers, like answering questions to see if the bot can answer the questions of people using that knowledge. But also this book is in theory, I don't say I'm going to do it, in theory, can also be used as a RAG to context if you're in that AI space on it. So yeah, great feedback, Andrew. I know you're a mentor inside your company, and you do a lot of mentorship like this of telling people how they can grow in their own. And also, I agree what you said about you learn more when you are going to teach something. At least that's what I do at work. I've been doing it for the many years of internal training that I did in IBM. I was one of the first people that I taught gave workshops and enablement to teach people what kubectl was, what Kubernetes was. And I trained hundreds of people, but I needed to learn it first. Like I needed to be an expert first. So that forces you to like dive deep, and really understand those things to then like prepare yourself to either teach it through a book, right, in writing, or teach it through a workshop, or just a technical enablement of teaching others about it. Then you actually, when you teach, you learn more when you teach it than when you're taking the course. So for the book, these are the different chapters. Just for going quickly, we're going to understand like the introduction to Argo. It mentions Argo and Flux in there. Like a lot of people asked about that question. I don't know quickly. You know if Argo, who came first? I cannot remember. I used Argo before it was in OpenShift at all, but I cannot remember when Flux came out. Was after, before, or around the same time?
Flux
I think it
was
was
first.
before.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it
Yeah,
before.
it was first. Yeah.
Yeah. WeWorks, I think, with Flux came out. But yeah, those two are the ones that I remember. There's other Argo GitOps tools out there. Go ahead.
and this is important because Argo is great, but Flux has amazing capabilities too. I always say, look at the tool that's available to you, whether it be Flux, whether it be Argo, and see the one that makes the most sense to you. And most importantly, if you and your organization are small, you don't need to do a tool like Argo. If you have a process, let's say you're deploying one microservice, and you have a process in place, and it works great, don't change, please. Go ahead and focus on business value. Don't go ahead and just adopt tech to adopt tech.
Yeah, I agree. We're going to cover installation just for people that are here. Like we have up to 26 people. So if you are going to come back, these are the type of things we're going to discuss. And as you read the book, please read the book. That makes the book club more interesting, because then you come back with questions that are like maybe not answering the book, or like you have questions about the book. This is where we use the book authors. Like a book author would like clarify something that was in the book, or something that is not in the book that they want to tell a story around it, right? Why they wrote it this way, or why they choose to use certain process or technology. So managing applications, help versus customize, synchronizing applications, dealing with ignoring differences or aligning difference or cyber side. Like you have everything, sync waves. Why when sync wave doesn't work? When did they work? When you have to enable it, authentication, authorization, which for some reason is like people do this last. They don't do that first, but they need to get the app running first, right? The POC, cluster management, which at least I'm doing a lot of work around multi-cluster management, a lot of public speaking around that because I work with a lot of customers, multi-cluster, multi-tenancy also important, security. Like some people like this is where they get stuck of like, how do I configure the TLS and the signature? How do I make sure that the Git code that I'm getting is signed, right? Like these are the type of stuff that you need to do in production. So having this in this book is like now you don't have excuses, right, to not do it. Um, Applications at scale, extending Argo with plugins. I don't know if you cover the UI. Yeah, user interface customized. Like I'm trying to look for something that you didn't cover. You cover everything. CI. You have Tecton here. Interesting. CI/CD and integration about CI and then CD and then operationalizing like how do I configure Prometheus and Grafana. This is something that we're discussing in the SIG multi-cluster SIG Argo CD SIG because Grafana is kind of a pain to maintain. It's a blob of JSON. So I'm looking into other additional alternative, like a project called Per Se, which is a declarative way of creating dashboards to see if we can put that in the Argo CD project. So from the Go code, we can generate those dashboards, right? And we always maintain it with the latest metrics, with a lot of right names. And we can have that. So you have that. That's very important. And people they do Prometheus and Grafana for the apps, but they don't do it for the controllers, right? The things that run in the cluster that do manage your apps. And then what's the future? So if you stick with us, those are the things that we're going to discuss for the following weeks. You see, that was the table of content. Checking if there was any comment in the Slack. Phil Flux was first. Maybe workflow was around the same time. Argo workflow was first overall. Yeah, I work on Tecton because Tecton came out of Knative build. I didn't know about Argo workflow existed after I discovered Argo CD and then discovered Argo workflow. So that's my discovery for Argo workflow. And it's both are very good. It's a native way of doing CI. I think you mentioned a little bit about navigate. We already did the navigation of the book. The things that we're going to use, like some of you have a repo, right? I think I was looking for the repo.
Yeah.
Where is the repo? Is this one?
It's on my personal GitHub. No, it's not it. I will get you to it 1 second.
That actually is it. If you click that link, it goes to Saber. It goes to it goes to your GitHub repo.
It's a short link.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
If you're desperate, there's this direct link.
Yeah, Andrew put it there. So is all the exercises be able to be done in kind, like a real kind cluster, or you need OpenShift, or you need something else?
We wanted to make it as simple as possible, so it's built for kind. So all our tutorials assume that you're able to get kind running on your machine. It takes all the restrictions away. I know dollars and cents are important to everyone today, so we're not requiring you to spin up anything externally. So all you need to do is just download kind, a good project from the CNCF, and be able to then get that up and running, and you can get going in no time, honestly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we when we wrote all of this, we did it with kind. So if you're asking like how did you test all of this, we did everything with kind. But we also made sure that like we didn't do anything kind specific. So kind of I just want to call that out, right? Like this quote unquote should work with very little augmentation, right? So like you should be able to augment it relatively easy for whatever environment you're in.
Yeah, and also that helpful. Like some people, when they do like enablement, like they do workshops. Usually they do it out of books. So I'm predicting that people will use this book to be able to create kind of a workshop environment inside their company, or like a sandbox environment with an IDE and a terminal. And if they can do all the exercises right live on kind as a group, they can do learning like that. So we talk a little bit about the GitOps. I think most of the people in this team, in this group, knows what GitOps is. We have been talking for it for a while. But yeah, let's talk a bit about the open GitOps principle. I know I was involved with that. It was 2021.
Around there, yeah.
Maybe? Yeah.
Yeah, it was around there, yeah. I think that's like right around the time that we got to know each other, you and I, Carlos, right? Is like in the Open GitOps. So kind of like a quick history on Open GitOps, and this is kind of something that I was involved with from the beginning, was that the idea behind Open GitOps, right? So at the time, GitOps was like essentially becoming a marketing term, right? And us in the community, and like us in the, when I say community, I mean like Argo CD and Flux, right? Like we both, us in the broader GitOps community didn't want like a cloud situation to happen, right? Like right now, if I ask all of you here what is cloud, right, I'm gonna get 20 plus different definitions, right? Because like it was just used as like a general marketing term, right? So what we wanted to do is like we wanted to actually put like a definition around it, or that was like the original idea. Like, well, how do we define GitOps? And it's like, well, how about we just kind of set up a set of principles, right? Like if you in principle are doing these things, right, and we want it to be inclusive, right? We didn't want it to be exclusive. So if you're reading this, you notice we didn't mention Git once at all, even though it's GitOps, right? We didn't mention Git. Because we wanted it to be, accessible to everyone, but we also wanted to put guardrails, be like, it's not just kind of a event-driven process with Kubernetes wrapped around it, right? Like it's more of a it's more defined, and it's more specific than being event-driven, right? And so we set up kind of like almost like axioms, right? Where like kind of things that are self-evident, but things that build on top of each other, right? So it's kind of the things like, okay, we want people to be able to be like, okay, like we did principle 1 already, right? So like we're already there. Cool. All right, we did principle 2. All right, cool. We already, we're there. All right, we're doing principle 3. Now we're doing principle number 4. Now we're actually doing GitOps, right? Now we're actually have a GitOps process around it. So it's kind of they're relatively short, right? Like I'm not gonna like read off of it or anything like that. They're pretty self-evident. But that was the idea about Open GitOps, and that was something that I don't know if you remember, Carlos. It took like I don't know months, right? Or it felt like years and a lot of meeting.
The one that I think it was, I remember when we were doing this, was like we, at least in the field, and I talk about the field, like people practicing, was like they were mentioning GitOps and that they were using GitOps, and then when you ask more questions, actually they were using Git to run kubectl and Helm to apply, right? They would get the code git clone in Jenkins, and they would like kubectl Helm apply their Git files in the operations tool, which was Jenkins. So I was using GitOps, and that was like, that's why we wanted to differentiate. Like you're using Git for operations, but you are like deploying in one shot, like kubectl and Helm, but that's not GitOps. Like you need to, there's a controller that needs to be involved to reconcile, right? That always goes back, is that the desired state, the actual state, like the same promise theory that is in Kubernetes.
Yep.
In this case, this is why I keep saying like, why is not GitOps inside Kubernetes? Like because we humans have not agreed on it. That's the only reason are the humans impeding it. Technically, it can be done, but that same concept of that promise theory, we controllers to have like the desired state of the configuration be inside the Kubernetes cluster, safe in the database in etcd, and then Kubernetes has another controller that will make that what is in etcd be in real time, like in pods, right? And things are eventually consistent. But yeah, a lot of people are saying like, yeah, I'm using GitHub Actions or Argo Workflows and Tekton, and that's GitOps because I'm using Git everywhere. Does that resonate? I think that's what I remember from like, then I had this and then I clarify using GitOps, this is the definition.
Yeah, the thing is, I was just kind of, like you said, taking the promise theory of Kubernetes, but then just kind of generally applying it, right, to like the entire cluster or like applications, right, getting a layer on top of that. But I always try to say, like, I always explain to people, it's like a wall-mounted air conditioner and a thermostat, right? Like when I get warm, I stand up. That's an event. I stand up, I turn on my air, my wall-mounted. If I get warm, again, another event, I stand. Sorry, if I get too cold, I stand up. I go to the wall unit and I turn it off, right? And so where GitOps, that's like an event-based system. Like whereas GitOps is like you have a controller, the thermostat, and you set your desired state, right? 7270, right, or whatever, or 2022 for those that are in that use Celsius. But like you set your desired state, and then the thermostat then controls whether to turn on or turn off, right? And like that's really, if you really want to get bare bones down, kind of simplify it, that's like really the heart of GitOps and the open GitOps principle.
Yeah, that's correct. So Andrew, like I like that the fact that this book actually mentions Flux. Like somebody would like buy the book and they would think like the only thing that exists in the GitOps source is Argo. I think it's good to have it in the book because people are like sometimes evaluating different projects or different technologies. Should I use Argo? Should I use Flux? Do I use both? And they really don't know. So I think I think it's a good thing for you to have it in the book. What was the reasoning behind it?
The reasoning mainly is that it's a community. We're in a community. We realize that in many cases, you're going to end up using all these different tools at some point, whether it be as part of your job, whether it be as just you investigating and being curious. We want to make it so that you can be most informed about the technologies out there and make the best decision based upon what you need. I'll be honest that the support for Helm is probably more superior in Flux. It's true, just because of the way they handle it. But there are some benefits that Helm does over Flux. It's pros and cons and trade-offs, and you need to assess which ones make the most sense for you and your use cases. So we want to at least provide as much information as we can so you can have and make that informed decision.
Yeah, I get a lot of questions about like Flux and Argo. Like literally, they'll put in Carlos, this, they'll put the Argo booth right next to the Flux booth, like back to back, right? And like people will just like wander back and forth and like and I actually spent a lot of time with Flux just because I just wanted to know, right? And so the comparisons is really like you're talking about like 4 or 5 like differences, right? There's a lot that is the same, right? And there's a lot that we learn from each other in terms of community, right? You'll see me in the Flux channel, right, answering questions just because I've used Flux. Like it's
a small community. We know the Flux people, they know us, we work with them, and it's like Coke and Pepsi. We both, everyone has their preference, but in the end, they're all part of a greater good. And as long as you're all drinking stuff, great.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes I just tell people like it depends who's your audience is, right? And I think lately what I've been sharing with the community in Slack and in the conferences and in the last KubeCon is Argo CD. For a lot of people, you don't realize Argo CD UI, they think it's the Kubernetes UI. They are interacting with this thing that somebody mentioned that their apps are running in Kubernetes, and they access this app through a UI. They don't know it's called Argo. It's just a nice looking orange, green UI that they single sign on, and they can see a red X in their app, and they can like click on it, see the logs. They can click on it, see a terminal, like delete or restart. But they don't know like there's a controller or like that's to them is like Kubernetes UI is the Argo CD UI. A lot is growing so much that a lot of people, that's how they get their apps deployed. They don't want to learn about like the difference between config map and a secret, right? They want to write the logic and then be in tune with the CI/CD process if something breaks in one of the environments or which environment do they use, enough for them to be productive. I don't know. That's my opinion. When the other UI, I think it was headlight came out, I was like, Argo CD UI users are going to have a difficulty moving or using both, or maybe sticking with Argo CD UI. So that's my point. At least the UI is one of the things that comes up with them when they're evaluating both. But that's my point of view when I see in the field. Is that what you see also, like the UI being like important to some end users?
The UI, so like really, yes. So like it's always like I always compare, like you're talking about the UI, and like that's very central in Argo CD, and I think that comes from the philosophical approach that Flux took and Argo project took, right? So like Weaveworks approached it from like an SRE standpoint. It's like, I want to keep the lights on and I want to be able to quickly remediate, coming back from an outage, blah, 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 right? Like it's very, and very close to my heart, very command line focused, because, like that's kind of like the people that used it. Where Intuit, right, when building Argo CD, they came from the perspective of, okay, well, we want people to use Kubernetes. We don't want to teach all our developers all these kubectl commands, and like, because at the time it was very new. Intuit was a very early adopter of Kubernetes. So there was a time where, like, you tell developers, what's a pod? They had no idea what you're talking about, right? Like now, yeah, of course, but like before they didn't. So they approached it from a user experience standpoint, right? Let's abstract Kubernetes. Let's abstract the complexity, and let's just build the user experience, which, a UI is a big part of the user experience for developers, right? Developer user experience. And let's build it from that standpoint, right? So the approach, they solve kind of like the same problems, right? That's why they're like, Flux and Argo overlap, but coming from a different like point of view, right? It's really, when people ask me the difference between Argo and Flux, it's like, well, you're approaching it, the difference is philosophical, because they approach building the tool from a different way, right? And so that's kind of that's why the UI is important, especially for developers.
And one thing, like I know, Andrew, you're a maintainer of Helm, right? Is that correct?
That's right.
You're the expert on this. So one use case that came up, I think it was in the recent month, I think it was with Carpenter or something, that I was getting questions, was around CRDs, the CRD folder in Helm. That's, so to some people, they will get like upset. Some other people, they don't know what it is. So the CRD folder with the CRD YAMLs in Helm, in Argo CD, we do a Helm template. So we just expand all the things in there. So if a package owner from an open source project updates the CRD, Argo CD will just like, oops, I'm just going to expand the CRDs and they get updated. When you use Helm CLI or you use Flux, does Flux solve that issue, or still having that problem, or it's solved already in Flux?
So with Flux themselves, they're using the API. So the way Helm works with Argo is it basically shells out. Under the covers logic of how Argo works. It just does Helm template, the Helm CLI template. Flux goes ahead and actually creates an actual release object using the SDK. It doesn't use the CLI binary. So it has a little more intelligence, and it's able to inject and basically manage the lifecycle of Helm a little differently than Argo does. I like it because it's a little more programmatic, and you have a little more control. It's something that I've had discussions in the Argo community for a while, just about how we're going to handle Helm, because there are improvements, whether they be moving more just towards the SDK, even if we don't change the actual logic, but at least change how it's being implemented. That at least would probably be the easiest out of the box, is just to go ahead and just leverage the SDK instead of just shelling out.
And the CRD problem is still there in Helm or Flux versus Argo CD. Argo CD, I think, is just solving it by accident, by just using Helm template, right?
I think it's not. I don't think it's a problem, but I don't know offhand. So I'm not. I'm gonna plead the US Fifth on this one.
Okay, good. Yeah, we can investigate, but that was one. And also the same thing of when you use you go to and say Helm list and you don't see anything. People use Argo CD, people are like, where's my Helm?
Right. Well, that goes back into the difference between using Helm template and Helm install.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you look at Flux, you'll see a release object because it is performing a Helm install. Versus Argo, you just templatize the resources.
Okay. We'll go to the second chapter, but I'll take a question from Jack. Go ahead, Jack.
Okay, so I came from an environment where we had clusters and VMs. And the VMs were outside of the cluster. So we were using Jenkins. Now, is there does Argo CD play nice with anything outside of Kubernetes? Or this is a Kubernetes book club and we don't talk about outside of Kubernetes?
So Argo itself has to be run inside a Kubernetes cluster.
Okay.
And it needs to be able, and it manages Kubernetes resources. However, you can integrate any CI tool that you have with Argo. So what I recommend, and I've seen my customers do, is they have their CI pipelines in Jenkins. They've been doing it for 30 years at this rate. Yeah. And they go ahead and they build the image. They go ahead, push the image. and then they go ahead and they trigger Argo using the CLI. You're going to use the CLI throughout this book, and you can go ahead and integrate the CLI into your Jenkins pipeline. Or there are even plugins, I believe, now in Jenkins that also enable you to easily integrate it into the Jenkins.
Okay. So everything plays. Okay, good. Okay, answer my question. Thank you.
As long as you're targeting a Kubernetes cluster for your manifest, you're fine.
Yeah, the thing that is not going to help you is install the software or update the software inside that VM. Those things are being done by the cloud, right? The cloud specification that everybody uses. I forgot the name. Or back in my days, Ansible was the best tool to like install the things inside Linux, right? Or
CloudFormation, Chef, Puppet, Terraform, you pick.
Yeah,
those things.
Yeah,
Argo is not going to install that software inside that VM.
Yeah. So like a lot of people broker, like, because just full stop, Argo CD manages Kubernetes resources, but there's tools that integrate into things like it turns like Crossplane, I think, is like the biggest one, where it's like you have Kubernetes resources, but on the back end it's running Terraform, right? Like that's kind of one of the things. In the Red Hat world, you have the Ansible operator, right? You have an operator that runs Ansible scripts that can do that, right?
Kubernetes
so like
APIs.
Kubernetes API, but it's very Kubernetes centric. So
So Jack, and then your question about, we don't talk about things that are not Kubernetes. We talk things about that are not Kubernetes, but we actually talk about things that are not Kubernetes and how do we bring them into Kubernetes. So you can take all those VMs and use something like KubeVirt and run those VMs inside Kubernetes, managed as Kubernetes. So it'll be these agentic pods that have your VM, which will give you like enough things to manage that pod, which is a VM, as a pod that is a container, and it give you kind of like a way of like transitioning those VMs into microservices pod if you can. But that KubeVirt, if you're not aware, is a technology Andrew probably knows, like that's an OpenShift KubeVirt. But yeah, things outside Kubernetes we talk to in terms of like bringing them into Kubernetes in this book club.
Okay, thank you very much. That's good.
Great answer. And I actually, you have two. We're grateful because like Andrew said, like this Andrew and Christian, like that with Argo and the OpenShift person. Andrew and Christian have been in the industry, Kubernetes, DevOps, CI/CD for many years. So these are the type of questions, right, that you folks handle at a daily basis, right?
Honestly, and this is the best part about this, is this book club is an opportunity to just connect the community to different individuals. And then you're going to start seeing different avenues of conversations. Like, Jack, I'm not putting you on the spot. You might have a KubeVirt question, an OpenShift virtualization question, where I might be able to answer it. Or you have a more deeper Argo CD question that Christian might be able to answer. This is where you can go ahead and make those connections. That's the best part about this.
Yeah. And it's a cloud native. I think it was a cloud native community. Maybe we're small to other IT industries, but everybody is approachable. Like in terms of the community, like this week I had problems with small images and Docker images with ChainGuard. So I just went to Slack and then pinged Eric. Eric, I knew him from the book club. He helped me out with some Python, Docker, ChainGuard type of thing. So it's a community that then you can ping someone in the Slack channel and they'll be able to find the answer for that. We're looking at time, so let's talk a little bit about the architecture. This is something that I think a lot of people don't know how Argo CD actually works. It's a group of pods, containers, config maps, and secrets. Who wants to like a quick overview of the different aspects?
Yeah, I can do a quick overview, right? So there's like the user interface, right, which is either like the UI or the CLI. There is a implicit kubectl, but like for me, if you're using Argo CD and kubectl, or if you're giving users kubectl access to Argo CD resources, you're doing it wrong probably. So, but that's like a philosophical idea here. But the CLI, when I say here, I don't mean kubectl, I mean actually the Argo CD CLI. And then the Argo CD UI that goes through the API server, right? So just like anything, it's front ending the API server.
And this API server, not to confuse people, a lot of people think that this is the Kubernetes API server. So
no, this is the Argo CD API server that front ends communication with separate controllers, right? So one is the application controller, which basically the application controller if you talk about an application in the Argo sense, capital A application is just collection of related Kubernetes resources. So that's like very simply, deployment, service, and an ingress, maybe. Like, let's just keep it really simple, right? Like, all of that together is considered an application, right? You name it something. And it just takes care of making sure that the resources are there and in the state that you want it to be, right? And then there's the repo server, right? So the repo server is in charge of interacting with your repository. So it'll interact with the repository, whether it be Helm or Git, and I guess now more recently OCI. Yeah, more recently, right? Like,
we'll get to that later.
we'll get to that later. All funny, like all three of us, right? Like we were involved with that, Carlos, you, Andy, and I. But basically, the repo server is in charge of like doing Git clones, or like Helm template, right? Or I guess ORAS pull or whatever, right? Like it's in charge of basically connecting to your repository and pulling the manifests, and then the application server interacts with the repo server to be able to deploy those things, right? So basically, the application controller asks the repo server, hey, what's the latest source of truth? And the repo server will then either interact with the repo, or if nothing's changed, it'll just report back nothing's changed, or this is the state, and then the application controller makes that state happen, right? There's the third component in the middle there, the application set controller, right? We go over application sets in the book, but the application set is nothing more than an application factory, meaning it's a templating. I hated to call it templating engine, but it's a templating in terms of like it just spits out multiple applications, right? And what we can go over, more in depth as the weeks to come with that. The infra part, right? Like there's a Redis server, there's Git, there's Dex that's involved. There's a lot of things to be able to make that thing happen, right? There's a big conversation lately is about Redis, but those are kind of like the infrastructure kind of components that the core components interact with. So it's
Redis a cache, right? Redis just has a cache.
Yeah,
No
it's just used as a
accelerates
cache, right?
access to.
It's also throwaway. It can be throwaway. You can basically it's an appendix.
Disable it. You can even disable it.
What's really cool about Argo is it's pretty much stateless, right? The only state that it really holds is in your repository, right? Your source of truth in Git, in Helm, in OCI, right? Like Argo CD is pretty stateless, right? Like people say, well, I want to run Argo CD HA, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, you probably do, you don't want pods disappearing or anything like that, but it's pretty stateless. Like there's no database to back up or anything like that. It's just kind of, if you're using GitOps to store your Argo CD manifest,
you have to back up etcd. You don't want to lose etcd.
Well, I mean, etcd,
well, in theory, you can get everything
You'll be
from
in bigger
Git.
trouble if you do that.
In theory, you have to have a mix and match. One quiz that I want to make, because we want to make this Kubernetes book club, like things that are not in the book, or maybe like a quiz for Andrew and Christian. So when I configure Argo CD for example, in manage Kubernetes cluster, like in this case EKS, the API server and the application controller talks to the kube API server, and that's the EKS control plane. So I need to give access when it's managing when it's targeting maybe a remote cluster, right? So the API server, does it talk to the kube API server or not? I see a line between API server and Redis. I don't see a line. I'm trying to follow the lines. I don't see a line between API server and kube API server.
So there's no direct connection between two Kubernetes API servers. You're going to have the closest you're going to have is going to be a connection between the Argo and the API server of the remote cluster. The two API servers never communicate with one another.
Oh, no, what I mean is the Argo CD. The Argo CD API server, does it talk to kube API?
No.
No.
The application controller does.
Okay, so we need to update. We need to update the docs.
No. That's incorrect. No. You can't. It's two components. It's the API server and it is the controller. I only know this because I've been doing a lot of work around federated identity,
Yeah.
and there's
Yep.
connections
Yes,
between the
I know.
federated identity and the API server.
So
So
we need
that-
to update this diagram to have a line between API server and Kube API. Because it talks to the API server, the Kubernetes API. And even like, it would be good to do, like, and we don't have to do it in the book. We can do it as homework, right? We can have another diagram of like introducing remote clusters on how these things talk to each other. But this is very important when you're running Argo CD in production yourself and you're owning this, right? This is open source software that you own. In essence, when you're running the open, like you grab it from open source, right, and run it. If you go to a cloud provider like Quidity, OpenShift, like they take care of like CVEs and patching this and running it and deploying it correctly. But understanding this is something that it goes beyond just using Argo CD, right? Understanding like these are the components when you go into Slack and talk to folks like, can I scale the repo server to multiple pods? Can I scale the application set controller to multiple pods? When they ask about application controller, can I increase the scale of that deployment? And you get an answer, well, application controller is not a deployment. It's a stealth set, right? But you can have multiple copies of it. Understanding this is super important, I think, for folks. And I'm glad that you started the book in the initial of the book, showing people this, because some people just think it's one pod. Install Argo CD and it's one pod, and then everything runs there. But it's an architecture of multiple pods working together. It's microservices, like connections are even secure between them, because you don't want to have, you can secure them, you don't want to have plain text from one component to another.
So
Go
there's
ahead.
actually a very lightweight deployment of Argo called Argo Core.
Core, yeah.
We do cover that in chapter 2, where you can basically, it's just the minimal set of resources that you need to actually install and run Argo. And it just installs the application controller, the repo server, and maybe Dex. No, not even Dex. I mean, it's basically just those two components.
Yeah, those two components, yeah.
That's it. So if you really want to go lightweight, we even show you how to do it in chapter 2.
Oh, cool.
And take a look at that. Yep.
So I think with that, we out of time. Chapter 1, go ahead and read it. It basically gives you the two options to install through the direct YAML file. Carlos, if you hear someone, Carlos doesn't recommend that. Go with the Helm if you want to go into production, but that's my opinion. Christian and Andrew can have different opinions, but my opinion is go with Helm if you're going to production, and have Argo CD manage Argo CD. I think we're going to talk about that in the future, but we can start with chapter 2 and the core, and then chapter 3 next week. So Andrew, what do you think? Last minute, do you like this format? You've never been a host.
No, I think it's great. Being able to just chat with the community, sharing the book as kind of a vehicle for conversations is fantastic.
Yep. Okay, same Christian.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's fantastic. Love talking about the book and getting the feedback and the questions. Love the questions as well. Love the conversation on chat.
Yep. And I invited a lot of people, and I tried LinkedIn, I tried inside my company, told them like, we're doing 10 weeks of Argo CD. This is your chance to talk to the experts that wrote the book. If you like Kubernetes up and running, this is a better book. That's my opinion, right? I'm just my 2 cents.
That's a great endorsement. Love it. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. We'll see you until next week. Thank you, folks.
Yeah,
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Have a great weekend, great week, and we'll see you next week. See you, folks.
Yep. Cheers. Thank you.